Welcome to the Missions Podcast, the show that explores your hard questions on missions, theology, and practice to help goers think and thinkers go. I'm Alex Kochman, Director of Communications and Advancement for ABWE, joined by Scott Dunford, who is the pastor of Redeemer Church in Fremont, California, and Wayne Chen with Radius International. Wayne, what is your official title with Radius?
Well, I'm the director for Radius Asia. That's kind of the sister program that we run in Taiwan.
So, well, tell us about that briefly then.
It's a nine-month pre-field training, very much like Radius International in North America, but it is all Mandarin, and the goal is the same. We're training future missionaries to take the gospel to the least reached language groups for the goal of church planting.
And without compromising anything, give us an idea of where graduates from Radius Asia are going or trying to go.
Okay, and where they come from too, because I'm sure it's not just...
It's mostly from Taiwan right now, but in the past we have got students from Singapore, Malaysia and Hong Kong. Because of COVID restrictions and all the border bans, we have not been able to get as many students from those countries in the last 2 years, but that should pick up pretty soon. We have graduates already serving in Africa, and they're our first graduate, a family of 3 young kids. They're in a location where they got to tackle 3 languages.
Wow.
Just so that they could plant a church amongst that unreached language group. We have another one in Central Asia, again in minority groups. We're very big on, we're not against planting churches in big cities. I mean, we feel like that's necessary. But what the Radius training really prepares people for is for those people who want to just go beyond the major cities, go beyond the majority languages, but take the gospel and plant churches in those unreached language groups that are a lot of times remote. They're harder to get to. So we got 2 families on the field already. We got 2 or 3 more on the way to Africa, to Southeast Asia. All of them going to difficult unreached language groups.
So if you're listening to the show from Singapore or from Taiwan or a place like that, and you're interested in being, or you just happen to speak Mandarin.
If you are Mandarin speaking
from California,
then we could take you at Radius Asia. It's a 9-month training program. Now, there's a caveat. If you have a China passport, unfortunately, we can't take you in Taiwan.
So, in the early 2000s, I feel like everyone in the missions world was talking about back to Jerusalem movement, and all the Chinese churches that were sending missionaries to the Middle East. We hear stories of all the Korean missionaries that are serving. You hear these stories, right? And in the mission world, there's this lore about, hey, Asia's doing all this stuff in missions. From your perspective, and I realize it's one perspective, what's happening in Asia with regards to missions, as far as Asian churches mobilizing for the Great Commission?
One thing that I had to learn coming back to Asia to serve, and this is something that I tell people oftentimes now, that Asia is a loaded word. It's a loaded region. And when you want to talk about...
It's only half the world's population.
Right, and we don't talk about the Chinese church. Again, that's a loaded word.
Right.
And China is so big that I often tell people that everything that you hear about China is probably true, but it's not representative.
Yeah, true somewhere in China.
It's somewhere in China. Just because you know a church that does this, just because you know somebody that's really all in on back to Jerusalem, it doesn't mean all the churches in China are on board with back to Jerusalem movement. So some of them aren't, but there are quite a few that are clearly articulating that, wait a minute, when we open the Bible, it doesn't say we're going back to Jerusalem. It says from Jerusalem, we're going to the ends of the world. So I think there's room for people going in different directions. And Korean missionaries are doing their thing. There's just different pockets of different churches in Asia. They're getting on board with the mission movement. So
think it's easy for an American Christian to look at the size and scale of the South Korean church and missionary sending movements, or to look at the zeal of persecuted Christians in a place like China and say, wow, there's so much good stuff going on there. How could we possibly contribute? Do we even need to send missionaries to parts of Asia? What work is there left to do? Clearly the church is thriving there and they're sending missionaries to the rest of the world. So what are the mission needs that you still see in Asia?
Right. I mean, again, Asia is a loaded region.
Right.
So there are receiving countries and they're receiving locations and sending locations. I would say by and large, the Koreas, the Taiwans, I would say some people may not agree with me on this, but China is probably more of a sending country now than a receiving country. What they really need help with is not us dumping all the resources over there. I think sometimes agencies, overseas Chinese agencies, overseas Western agencies, make the mistake of constantly asking, how can we help? What do you need? How can we help? What do we need? When we constantly ask somebody, how can we help you? It really defines that relationship right off the bat, doesn't it? I'm the giver, you're the helper.
Yeah.
I think a better question is, well, how can we partner together?
Yeah.
Seeing them as equal partners, not as somebody that's always in need. I think that's a good reminder, something that I had to learn as well. But a lot of times, I mean, none of us have any evil intent, but a lot of times that question, how can we help? What do you need? Defines that relationship right off the bat.
So if a pastor's listening and they're saying, boy, I would love to partner with the church in Taiwan, for instance, on Great Commission projects, what would be some guidelines? And I realize we have to wrap this up, but what would be some just little tips you say, here's some steps to effective partnering with churches that you're interacting with?
Right. A lot of the strategies, hey, you know what? Let's partner with the local church on the ground. Let's help them to finish the Great Commission. And I would say to all the churches in the West, prior to committing to that partnership, ask yourself a question. If there's a church ready to partner with you on the ground, ask this question: what's stopping them from fulfilling the Great Commission themselves before this partnership? I mean, you always find churches willing to partner with another church, but ask the question: well, what's stopping them from responding to the Great Commission if we weren't in the picture?
Right.
And I think that's a wise question to ask. Nobody's going to turn down free resource. Nobody's going to turn down a free VBS program in the summer. Nobody's going to turn down a short-term mission team that doesn't cost them anything. Yeah. But recently I heard the phrase, good is the enemy of great. And I don't mean great as in it's what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of good things that we can do. But finding a church in Taiwan that's willing to host a short-term mission team to do VBS, I mean, that's not a bad thing to do, but perhaps we ought to consider, can we spend that $20,000 elsewhere?
Yeah. Right. Let's not content ourselves with
with good things.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how exactly can we partner with them so that we could take the gospel to the least reached language.
Yeah. Well, and I think that we always need to be challenged with that, because just as Americans, as North Americans, we're just used to thinking that we're the benefactors, everyone else is the beneficiary of that, and that it's dependent upon us to sort of save the world. And that's not always true. God has his people in every tribe and nation, and increasingly more so. So, Wayne, we appreciate Radius Asia. We appreciate your work here at the conference and the talks that you've given. And how can people find out more about Radius Asia? Can they do that just from the main Radius website?
Yep, they could do that from the main Radius website. same core values, same goals. We're just training
language.
with different language.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching and listening today. To get more content here from the Radius Conference in Matthews, North Carolina, go to missionspodcast.com. Go to missionspodcast.com/support to support the show and partner with us, and leave us a positive rating and review in your podcast platform of choice. That'll help get this content in front of other people. And so until next time, thank you for watching and listening.